Professor Saeed Mohammed Marandi, chair of the American Studies Department at the University of Tehran. Professor Marandi, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. We're just listening there to Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband, Richard, talking about that terrible ordeal that they have had for the past 6 years as they've been separated as a family. Is there regret in Iran for her arrest?
No, I don't think so. Whenever an Iranian is arrested abroad, whenever Western governments say that they've arrested an Iranian, the assumption is that the Iranian is definitely guilty. But whenever someone from a Western country is arrested in Iran, the assumption in the West is that person is innocent. And in fact, your Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, when he was Foreign Secretary in Parliament, he basically admitted that she had violated the law, although he had to backtrack later on amidst the outrage in the media, which is strange because you'd think it would be the other way around. The media would be looking for the truth and trying to find out the truth. But in any case, there's also an Iranian.
Tell us about the timing then. Yes. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. There's an Iranian.
Yes, there's also an Iranian being returned, but you will not hear anything about that in the Western media because, of course, the Iranians are not very important. It's just like how we're seeing wall-to-wall coverage of the war of Ukraine, but we don't hear anything about the war in Yemen, which is infinitely worse. And it's basically because the people of Yemen don't have blue eyes, they don't have blonde hair, and so they're not worthy. Just like the fact that the British government has
we've covered the war in Yemen, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Syria, the war in Iraq, non-stop, cover to cover. I've traveled to these places myself for many, many years. So this ongoing accusation against Western media is inaccurate. We have covered those wars extensively for many, many years. But I just want to bring you back to this issue of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. Tell me about the timing of this. Why now?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that the coverage on Yemen is zero compared to Ukraine. And it is ongoing, and there's a starvation taking place, and thousands of British military experts are helping keep the Saudi Air Force afloat. But with regards to the situation now, I think there is a new beginning that is being attempted by Western governments because of the difficult circumstances that they now face in Europe. They, of course, after the nuclear deal, Western countries violated the deal and then tore up the nuclear deal, whereas the Iranians were abiding by their commitments. Now Western countries want to come back to the deal. If they abide by the deal in full, then I think this can be a new beginning, but it depends on them. This prisoner exchange...
But was her release, yes. Was that part of getting this deal back?
Yes, and well, it's not directly linked. There was no negotiations over the Iranian prisoner in the UK or her in Iran in Vienna, but negotiations were taking place elsewhere. So we can say there was parallel negotiations taking place. And there's the issue of the Iranian money that the British have been holding for decades, and the Iranians, many Iranians probably have died because of the lack of money, their own money, especially during the maximum pressure sanctions. So despite the immense
can I ask about that money, the £400 million debt? There are reports that has been paid. The UK government has denied it and says and acknowledged that they owe the money, but there are reports that it has been paid.
My understanding, I don't have any official information, but my understanding is that the money has been transferred, but I am not completely certain about that. But it is money that the British government has owed Iran for 4 decades. And especially during Corona, when Iran needed that money badly, it was not forthcoming. And a while back, this prisoner exchange actually was supposed to take place within a broader context, including American prisoners. But the Americans...
Who told you it was an exchange? The prisoner exchange. Yes.
It's in the news, basically.
We just want more information.
Yeah, my understanding is that an Iranian is also going to be released.
But if you could just give us more information about that prisoner exchange between the two.
Well, there are two prisoner exchanges that were discussed. One was a few months ago, where there were American prisoners, Iranian prisoners, and British prisoners. The Iranians have more prisoners held abroad because there are a lot of Iranians who are being held for busting sanctions. The sanctions are illegal, but wherever an Iranian tried to bust sanctions in order to obtain equipment for the food industry or elsewhere, the Americans would order that person to be arrested. So we have a lot of Iranians either being held in American prisons or being held in prisons in other countries waiting for extradition. And there are some Iranians who have fled to Iran, but their assets have been confiscated simply because they were uh, breaking sanctions that were illegal. There was supposed to be a larger exchange a while back, and everything was agreed upon, and it would have included what is going on now between Iran and the UK. But at the last moment, the United States backed away.
So this prisoner, I mean, you've just said that it's unlikely to be reported on, but we want just more information on who this prisoner is and when they're likely to return to Iran.
My understanding is that there's a single person who is going to be released. I don't know the person's name, but I think that person will be released quite soon. That is my understanding.
So you don't have any more details on the name or the reason?
No, not the specifics. But that person has been held longer than British Iranian prisoners in Iran.
Would you accept or acknowledge then that these two were essentially, or Nazanin and Anusha were essentially political pawns in all of this?
You know, again, this narrative building in the West is based upon the assumption of some sort of that the West is good and Iran is bad. I don't accept that narrative. Your own prime minister went in parliament. People can go on YouTube if YouTube hasn't deleted it yet, because right now everything is being deleted. RT, all sorts of things are being censored in the West now. But if his clip still exists, people can go and look for themselves to see what the British prime minister said in parliament about the fact that she violated the law in Iran. And obviously, the Iranians have said that she and the other have done more than that. I don't see how. I mean, I don't know this woman. Let's assume that you and I know nothing about her. I don't see how we can assume that someone who's arrested in Iran is necessarily innocent. That's based on the assumption that under no circumstances do British or Western governments carry out espionage in our country. And I don't know how one can assume that when an Iranian is arrested abroad, we can automatically assume that that person is not a pawn, that person has definitely violated the law, and Western governments are sincere.
Okay, Professor Marandi, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.